we drop it? Damn, I dropped that faster than Biden dropped the Hyde Amendment.
Wow, salty from the beginning. Love it.
It's gonna be a great show. Francesca Fiorentini and Jayar Jackson join me for hour one. Hour two will feature Brooke Thomas and Brett Ehrlich. So it's gonna be a pretty crazy show. Yeah.
Which panel is more powerful is the question.
Ours. We'll see. We'll see. It's for the audience to figure that out and decide. So I am looking forward to today's show. In the second segment, Jayar is going to present a story involving Michael Flynn and his lawyer and leaked audio. It's not even leaked. A judge has allowed the release of the audio. So we're gonna listen to that a little bit, and it's pretty incriminating. And then we also have my favorite story of the day, which is David Pakman's appearance on the Joe Rogan podcast. They discussed the whole Carlos Maza situation, and Rogan essentially makes it seem like he's saying that Dave Rubin might have a mental health condition. I don't know what is going on with that clip, but we're gonna show it to you, and we'll decide, I guess, talk about it.
But I mean, probably,
yeah,
maybe. Is being an extremist a mental illness?
I mean, I don't even think he's an extremist. He's a grifter. He's just a lazy grifter, and Rogan seems to be defending Dave Rubin as if his grifting is like something he was born with. No, it's something that he has developed in an effort to make money for himself. But anyway, we'll get to that story later. Why don't we start off with what's happening in Democratic politics? Joe Biden was getting a lot of backlash because he continued to support the Hyde Amendment. Now, of course, the Hyde Amendment is a ban on federal funds going toward abortions. And even though the party seems to have moved to the left on this issue, Biden was holding tight and still supporting that Hyde Amendment. Well, he has appeared to change his mind. He was recently speaking at the Democratic Committee's gala, and here's what he had to say.
I can't justify leaving millions of women without access to the care they need and the ability to exercise their constitutionally protected right. If I believe health care is a right, as I do, I can no longer support an amendment that makes that right dependent on someone's zip code.
So Biden tries to explain why there's been this giant flip. And he says circumstances have changed. I've been working through the final details of my health care plan like others in this race, and I've been struggling with the problems that Hyde now presents, as if the problems that Hyde now presents are new problems, when in reality, this has been a policy that's been set in place for decades now. And as recently as Wednesday of this week, Biden's camp indicated that he was supportive of the Hyde Amendment. So it is kind of surprising to see him flip so dramatically in the span of one day.
I am told this is what the kids are doing.
Totally.
And I definitely didn't write this myself. And in fact, I don't even really know how to speak. I'm tired. Where's my grape nuts? You guys, I love grape nuts. Good cereal.
So I want to make sure that I put my own issues here at the show. I want you guys to know like where I was at, because I remember doing an episode of The Damage Report recently. I think it was last week with Brett. And I had mentioned that I don't know if I'm against the Hyde Amendment, but a bunch of our members and a bunch of our viewers made really great arguments, and it forced me to really reconsider my position, and I did. And I understood that, hey, you know what, this is a woman's health issue, and the Hyde Amendment disproportionately impacts women who are living in poverty, women of color, and so I no longer agree with it. Is there a possibility that Biden is coming at it from a genuine place?
This is the question, of course. That's exactly what I was thinking as far as it. So remember when he was vice president and Obama had his evolution on gay marriage. I think it was marriage, not necessarily other gay rights, but gay marriage. And we were like, okay, sign of the times, people figuring it out. It was a political move, because honestly, I think President Obama was in favor of gay rights before that, but he's like, I'm not gonna win if I say that I'm supportive of LGBTQ rights to this degree. So his evolution came because of politics. Okay, people get their rights. I'm okay with that. He's already in office. But before you're in office and you're running for president, and literally 2 days ago, you're saying how you're still for this amendment after people were talking about how horrible it is. If you either didn't realize what was detailed in it after decades, or just didn't read about what people were saying about it now, but you still hold your stance, that's irresponsible. Now, is it your evolution on it, like what it was with gay marriage, or is it that it was a forced political move on your part? And I'm glad you pointed that out, because this looks like it's forced. When you're reading it like this, I'm like, women's right to health care.
Determine what happens to her body. Body, yes, and women have rights. And no, I mean, I think that it's an important. I mean, here's what I said on the damage report. Watch it, but. You know, the Hyde Amendment enacted in '74 or something like this. You're right, we've had decades and decades. And so we've seen the fallout that what might have begun, and it often happens, right? A lot of these, especially quote unquote pro-life ideas, begin in theory. Hey, theoretically, I don't think that taxpayer dollars should go to funding abortions immediately, right? Well, in practice, it is discrimination. And in practice, it affects women who are, as Elizabeth Warren, another 2020 candidate, said so eloquently and so passionately, unlike Biden, that it is going to affect young women, it's going to affect women of color, it's going to affect women who've been raped, who aren't going to tell their families, things like that. So in practice, we can see it's not having whatever desired effect that it was initially set out to do, which I would argue was not even that like noble of an effect anyway.
Right, exactly. And I personally had bought into or drank the Kool-Aid about how, well, if you believe in religious liberty in this country, you know, the taxpayer money coming from, you know, the Christian right shouldn't go toward these abortions. But here's the thing, I mean, and this was a great point made by David Dayen on the show this week. You can't pick and choose what you want your taxpayer money to go to. As we all know, and our money goes to all sorts of things that we don't like, including you know, preemptive wars and private military contractors, those types of things. And that was a great point as well. Now, I want to quickly go to Simone Sanders, who is working on Biden's campaign, and she took the time to defend him on cable news. Let's hear what she has to say.
This is likened to where the vice president ended up landing on marriage equality. You know, so I want to push back and you know, if the vice president was bending to the whims of a number of my liberal activist friends, he would have came out for Medicare for all last night. But you heard him talk about a public option. So he's authentic. Voters know who Joe Biden is.
So she's arguing, look, she works on his campaign, so of course she's gonna say he's being authentic. But are we really buying it? I mean, again, as recently as Wednesday of this week, the Biden camp indicated that he is very much supportive of the Hyde Amendment. And then there was a lot of backlash, including from Elizabeth Warren during the California Democratic Convention. And all of a sudden he changes his mind. Now, I wanna go to that video before we jump in, because I think what she had to say during a recent town hall on MSNBC was also very powerful. Let's take a look.
Under the Hyde Amendment, under every one of these efforts to try to chip away or to push back or to get rid of Roe versus Wade, understand this, women of means will still have access to abortions. Who won't will be poor women, will be working women, will be women who can't afford to take off 3 days from work, will be very young women, will be women who've been raped, will be women who have been molested by someone in their own family. We do not pass laws that take away that freedom from the women who are most vulnerable.
And to be clear, Elizabeth Warren is not just talking the talk, she's walking the walk along with many other Democratic candidates. They've co-sponsored legislation in order to repeal the Hyde Amendment. I believe there are only 3 Democratic candidates who have not signed on to that legislation. But this is really good news. I mean, it is good to see that the progressive wing of the party is so powerful that they are pulling Biden to the left, and you can see from the way that he's reading the statement that it's a reluctant, message.
Sure. Okay. So when Simone Sanders was talking about his evolution on this, just like she mentioned the marriage equality thing, just like I was mentioning, I didn't even know she even mentioned that. So it's the question is whether or not he means it or not. So when even in the characterization of it, well, he's not just bending to the whims of the liberals. What does that mean? Why is it bad as a politician to bend to the whims of voters, citizens, constituents that are voting you into office to do what? But represent them. So that's not bending to the whims. Like, this isn't a battle. This isn't a strong arm thing like, no, I'm not gonna let you change me. I'm only here to represent what you want.
That's exactly right.
That's the point.
She used it as a strength, the strength that he hasn't been listening to the national conversation, and therefore that's a good thing for this presidential candidate because Biden ultimately is speaking to the moderates.
True.
Where are they?
Yeah.
Hello? Oh, like the people who knew him as vice president, who are voting on name brand recognition only, who have mostly sort of are too busy or too overworked to really pay attention to politics. I think arguably a lot of the people who voted for Trump, who were like, well, he says he's gonna do it. I know him from The Apprentice, done. You know, box checked. Here's what I want from Biden. I want an apology. I want an apology for why you did support the Hyde Amendment.
Yes.
For an apology for saying that you don't think women should have full control of their bodies, as he did say back in the 70s. I want to see a better apology than the one that you gave Anita Hill.
You know, he specifically said that he's not apologizing for his previous position.
Right, that's his position, is that he's not going to apologize. Again, as if that were a virtue, whereas I think we'd all agree. I think that, I don't know, I guess I feel like it's a sign of strength to be able to say, hey, I was wrong back then and I've evolved on the issue, or I've gotten smarter. I mean, Anna, you just said, I informed myself. You know, initially, this is how I felt about this. I read some things, I listened to people, I reformulated an idea. Like, what a sign of strength and fierceness.
And it's not even an apology. It's an explanation of where your mind was and why you had a position and then why you've changed it. It doesn't even have to be like, oh man, I'm so sorry what I did. It's, this is where I was and this is why I was there. I've discovered now that's ignorant because I've listened to people who know better than I do. That's all.
Exactly, and to be clear, I brought that up because I did genuinely change my mind, and I wanted to know if, you know, I certainly hope people give me the benefit of the doubt, and I don't really have much to gain from changing my mind, right? I'm not running for president, but I wanted to know if it's unfair to give someone like me the benefit of the doubt and not give him the benefit of the doubt. But I do think the two situations are a little different.
You haven't been in power for 40 years. Like you haven't been in Congress.
I will be one day. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, listen. I also want to say that the fact that the Hyde Amendment specifically targets women who are on Medicaid is just further criminalizing the poor. I mean, we know that Medicaid is already a system that Republicans are desperate to defund and roll back. We know that women who are on Medicaid or who receive welfare are often called welfare queens, who just have babies in order to get more money for those babies, right? That's the right-wing talking point around them. That's been going on since the 80s, and it continues today. And how ironic that we're then preventing those women from gaining accessible, affordable abortions, not necessarily free, because I'm not clear that under Medicaid it would be completely covered, just like health services are not 100% covered under Medicaid. But you're turning around and further criminalizing them for wanting to terminate a pregnancy, many of whom are already mothers. They actually would spiral them farther into poverty. The fact that they're on Medicaid is part and parcel probably due to the fact that they can't afford to feed their families, right? So what are we talking about?
So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about climate change and what the DNC is doing or not doing. The Democratic National Committee has indicated that it has no intentions of hosting a debate that would feature the issue of climate change and only the issue of climate change. This was something that Jay Inslee was asking for, and the DNC did get back to him with the following statement. While climate change is at the top of our list, the DNC will not be holding entire debates on a single issue area because we want to make sure voters have the ability to hear from candidates on dozens of issues of importance to American voters. So we'll open this up to the panel. I want to get your thoughts, but Inslee was not happy about this. Climate change is the issue that he's really latched onto for his platform. And here's what he had to say about the DNC's decision.
The Washington governor is the first person in history to build a presidential campaign around climate change, a topic discussed for about 5 minutes in the last 3 presidential debates. You need, what is it, 65,000 individual donors to get on the stage at the debate?
You bet.
How many you got now?
We got a ways to go.
If you keep this topic in the debates, in the minds of voters, even though you're polling less than 1%, is that a victory? Or for you, are you really thinking you got a shot at the Oval Office?
No, my intent is to serve as President of the United States.
Recent polls show that Iowa Democrats now list climate change next to healthcare as a top concern. And after disasters like this, you'd think even skeptical Republicans might join them.
So do you have water service here now?
No, we have no water and no heat.
But Ron Perry down at the Risky Business Auto Shop is not buying what the governor is selling. The governor is here because he believes that all of this damage is the direct result of climate change. Do you see it that way?
No, absolutely not. I blame it on the Corps of Engineers totally.
Oh, Ron, I would argue that it's risky business to deny climate change. Yeah. All right. So, what do you guys think about this?
It doesn't make you gay to believe in climate change, Ron. Pro tip.
So here's the question: Is there even a sliver of an argument coming from the DNC? You know, they're saying, look, we don't want to host single issue debates. It has nothing to do with climate change. We just want to make sure that we touch on all sorts of issues in every single debate.
It's the reason why they did it. They're smart enough to be able. They can get by with that statement and say, hey, we want to do more than just one issue. We've got 37 candidates, so we want to make sure that we go to a host of issues. Some of their strengths, some of their weaknesses. We want to have a robust debate. Cool, but you know what? There needs to be a certain level. So as they mentioned in that piece, 5 minutes worth of discussion about climate change in the past 3. Am I right? So if nothing else, okay, you don't want to do an entire debate on it. Okay, I'll buy that. You don't have to, but I'll buy it. Let's give half of an entire debate to one. Hey, you know what the Republicans debated about consistently and over again? Tax cuts. Tax cuts, Muslim terrorism, tax cuts, then tax cuts, then Muslim terrorism, then renovating the tax plan, and then those terrorists that are from a Muslim background. That they talk about that constantly, but no one said we need to have a robust debate about our crumbling infrastructure, our education system. Those things weren't robustly debated for an entire debate, but these crazy things like tax cuts and the Muslim terrorism problem is constantly debated.
I mean, I think that's a really good point. I think that, you're bringing up a broader point, which is that, it bothers me to no end to see when primaries happen, you have the RNC and the DNC like speaking just different languages, literally different languages. So really, they should get together and all agree that there should be topics that we will cover and dedicate, whether it's an entire hour, an entire debate, or a certain amount of questions or time to the same topics. I don't know, throw it to the Democrats about, tax cuts or Muslim extremism or terrorism, whatever, you know what I mean? Like that.
Well, those topics will definitely be debated. I mean, we know
they will absolutely be debated. No, I think, listen, I love Inslee. Like, don't you just love, I love that this is his issue. And I love that he's running on this. And I absolutely think there should be a debate on it every week. Every week we should have a discussion about climate change and what our leaders are doing about it. Because literally none of the other issues matter if we're not tackling this. It's an existential question. It comes first. And 5 minutes in the last 3 debates, you heard the news report. How? Like, how are we not holding the DNC accountable for that? And mind you, all of the news outlets that ask the question after question about Trump's wall, about things that we know do not matter as much as climate change.
We've been convinced that those things are life-changing, life-threatening. Terrorism and the wall and tax cuts. We haven't been convinced that this is a life-changing event yet. That's why they don't care.
Even though we see it in front of our eyes.
Right. Well, here's the great news. I think that the one good silver lining to all of this is that the DNC is composed of the same weak establishment Democrats that we criticize all the time. The Democratic Party doesn't know how to fight, and this is the reason why you see them caving to certain things, and I think we can make them cave to this issue as well. So if you recall, back in the last election, they would only host debates on like Friday nights or maybe on Sundays when no one would be watching.
Yes.
And then they got enough criticism from Democratic voters that things changed pretty quickly. So the reason why I'm telling you this is because voters have much more power than they realize. And we have all of these tools at our disposal, social media, to really hold them accountable for what they're doing. If you want to debate on climate change, which I think you're absolutely right is incredibly important, it should be the top issue, then tweet to them, write to them, do whatever you can to really implement some pressure to get this done. Because I think it would be a fascinating discussion. I want to know how these candidates, are different from one another when it comes to their proposals.
And I guess DNC, like Joe Biden, they might go with it, but they're definitely not going to apologize, and they're not going to bend to the whims of those libs, but they'll do it.
Jayar referencing Simone Sanders and her defense of Biden flip-flopping on the Hyde Amendment. All right, we got to take a break, but when we come back, Jayar is actually going to take over and present a story about the Russia investigation that's pretty juicy. You don't want to miss it.
We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you want to get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment.
Hey everybody, welcome back to TYT. Anna, Fran, and Jayar with you. JM Frazier, who's one of our members, left a comment. JM is very excited about the panels today. In fact, the comment that was sent in says, "Yay, Franny Fio."
Franny Fio, yeah.
Franny Fio and Jayar. And Brooke and Brett in the second hour. Check out all this power, I love it. I noticed that I wasn't mentioned in any of that, but it's okay.
It's because you're the standard.
That's a given. Everybody loves you.
I don't know, not everybody.
Can I call you Franny?
Tracy.
You can't call me Fran, but you can call me Franny.
I like Franny.
I thought it was gonna be the other way around.
I like Franny, that's cute. Tracy says, Anna, I didn't read this ahead of time, but Tracy writes in, Anna looking stunning as usual, love the hair today. Thank you. I was on Fox 11, which is the local affiliate, not Fox News. And there's a show called The Issue Is, and they have a glam squad there. So this is what happens.
Are they called the glam squad, or you just called them? Because
I call them that.
That's very nice.
They have 2 different people who do hair and makeup.
Damn.
It's amazing.
Going at the same time.
And on one side of the head, they have to make sure they have to work together.
I'm so into it. I would love to have that. Cray Cray Souffle says, Jayar is my new superhero. All right.
I don't know what that means. Cray Cray Souffle likes you. That fits.
And I wanted to just announce a few things before we move on to the rest of our topics. Ryan Grimm, who is the DC bureau chief at The Intercept, and he's also a TYT contributor, is joining TYT on the second hour on Monday. And luckily, he's agreed to stick around for the conversation. He'll be talking about his new book, We've Got People. Tune in Monday, June 11th, when he'll be here. And then we're also doing an LGBT special next week on Tuesday. So join us Tuesday for the LGBT special hosted by Jason Carter. He used to be one of the hosts for Pop Trigger, so he's coming back to help us host this special. And we're gonna be featuring exciting guests from the LGBT community. Tune in by going to tyt.com/live at 8 p.m. Eastern time. By the way, we're able to do all these specials, and honestly, we mostly do a lot of these specials because of our members. Most of these specials have a component that is members only, and so please check out tyt.com/trial to just try out the membership. See if you like it. You don't have to pay anything. It's free for a week, and then if you decide you like it, you can go ahead and sign up, and we would be so grateful because it really does support us and allows us to do what we do. All right, with that said, Jayar, take over.
Well, let's do it. So as we know, the Mueller report was released in April. And thanks to Trump's talking points, what most Americans heard from it was that there was no obstruction and no collusion and no obstruction. But Robert Mueller actually during the report, he detailed many instances of the obstruction cases, which many people may not have read, including one particular back and forth between Trump's attorney and Michael Flynn's attorney. Of course, Michael Flynn was the disgraced national security advisor for Trump at some point. But now, thanks to another federal judge, Emmett Sullivan, he's ordered a release of some of the voicemails that was sent from Dowd to a few of Mueller's attorneys. And since we don't read, we get a chance to hear it. So let's take a listen.
It wouldn't surprise me if he's gone on to make a deal and work with the government. I understand that you can't join a joint defense. That's one thing. If, on the other hand, there's information that implicates the president, then we've got a national security issue, or maybe a national security issue, I don't know.
So in this first section, he wants to make sure that these attorneys understand the absolute and utter importance of the information that potentially Michael Flynn is giving. Now, of course, this is when Flynn he let the Trump people know that he can no longer work with the joint defense. What's going on, which basically means he was ready to talk to the government, which is what Dodd was worried about. But Dodd continued on after talking about the importance to talk about then maybe leaning on him for not giving up all the information.
You know, we need some kind of heads up, just for the sake of protecting all interests if we can, without you having to give up any confidential information. So, and if it's the former, then, you know, remember what we've always said about the president and his feeling toward Flynn. You know, that still remains, but
those feelings still remain. If it's the former, which is, if you have information that's gonna implicate the president, we need to know about it, and you need to also remember that we can maybe do something for you to keep that under wraps.
Wow. We could figure something out. The president still has feelings for you, Flynn. He loves you. He never meant what he said. Come back, be loyal, girl.
Francesca, you've been, you read the entire Mueller report, word for word, page by page, which
highlighted by highlight.
I got mocked by Anna for taking notes.
Well, because Jayar
nerd.
said he wanted to listen to the audio version of it, and then Fran's like, yeah, but you want to read it so you can highlight it.
It's Franny, okay? It's Franny, not Fran. And yes, I read it, and no, I can't necessarily summarize everything, but there was a lot of good takeaways, and this was a part like we were talking about. We already knew that this had happened. This was one of the many pieces of obstruction, which is one leg of the three sort of pronged investigation and report that is the Mueller report, which was basically that this is a mafia shakedown. This is what happens when Trump is leaning on all of his stooges to be loyal, and it'd be a shame if the president didn't trust you anymore, and it would be a shame if the president, if you had to say something about him. And so that's exactly what a mob boss does. You've seen The Sopranos. If you haven't, it's the best show ever. And this is the exact playbook, and it's where the Mueller report has the most evidence. I would argue that there's a lot of evidence in the other two areas, specifically the Trump campaign conspiracy and ties to Russians, but I guess we're not indicting. I guess that was never even the point, unlike what we all thought was supposed to be the point. But this is also where Mueller has set up and teed up Congress.
Right.
Look, it's on audio. There is a literal leaning on, this is obstruction. His lawyer, absolutely at the behest of the president, is asking Flynn to either both give them a heads up and or just maybe don't say anything. Like maybe zip it up.
So thoughts on Nancy Pelosi's unwillingness to even open an impeachment inquiry?
I mean, it's so cowardly.
Yeah.
It's absolutely cowardly, and it's disheartening after reading. I read 480 pages and took notes, but everything is there to continue this criminal investigation, to potentially, definitely impeach the president when under high crimes and misdemeanors and treasonous acts, absolutely. If only you're talking about the violating things like the Logan Act, the Emoluments Clause, all of these things that say you can't have business interests and or accept gifts or money from a foreign power. You can't negotiate around the backs of the United States with a foreign power to, let's say, drop sanctions on Russia. If only that, and we're not even talking about WikiLeaks and the most likely prior knowledge that the Trump campaign had, which again is hugely redacted in the Mueller report, but it's a really fun game of Mad Libs. and I have played it. If only that there's enough to impeach. There's enough to begin impeachment hearings. So it's incredibly cowardly, not to mention that so many people in her party, including her advisors, are pushing Pelosi to begin those
I think
proceedings.
Nadler's on that too. So the thing is also, Nancy Pelosi is waiting for the American people that haven't read it or won't pay attention to these aspects to come up with it themselves so she can be told. Again, we've talked about the centrist approaches of Biden. He's waiting for people to nudge him and tell him to go a different direction because he's too afraid to go to that direction on his own. This leadership is more like, but if we do it, they're gonna be mad at me. You have to make your case. Now, the thing is, I've always understood that approach and saying, hey, if we start these impeachment hearings and then everyone goes, how dare you, it's gonna hurt us. I get that. So you know what you do, crazy, and this is what Elizabeth Warren was saying when she was in that town hall with Chris Hayes. Hey, we could either give up or we make our case and do the deal. Make it happen. Go forward with it and tell people why you're going forward with it. You read the whole damn thing, and after you read it, you gave us 5 things that people have no idea are included with it. And by the way, this voicemail that we just now heard from Dowd to Flynn's attorneys is one of the multiple instances. This is one, and it's one aspect of one.
One of Michael Flynn's phone calls that was recorded that I don't think the others have been given actually to this judge yet, haven't been released. But the other ones are the juiciest ones because those are the ones that are with Sergei Kislyak, the Russian ambassador, and they have to do with dropping sanctions. They have to do with a tit for tat, you scratch my back, I scratch yours relationship that the Trump administration campaign in this moment was setting up for the future.
Well, we know that Nancy Pelosi is not going to move forward with impeachment. But it doesn't matter because Donald Trump still despises her and he makes the case during a recent interview with Laura Ingraham. We're gonna get to that story and more when we come back from the break.